Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Let's go ahead and get started. Just so everybody knows, it is being recorded. I know Zoom will tell you, hey, this is being recorded, but it is being recorded, and we will eventually post this out on the website and our YouTube channel so that you can come back and refer to it. But also for the people that signed up to come see it and weren't able to make it, they can go back and see all the fun that they missed. So again, welcome. We've got people from, looks like around the world. I know we've got people from, it looks like as far away as Morocco and all the way here in the States. We've got some Canadians on the line. So welcome to everyone. We appreciate y'all coming. My name is Matt Lassiter. I'm the founder of Engaged Agility, and I've been running it since about 2020 and absolutely love it. I love to build relationships, meet new people, and see what kind of magic we can make happen. This is just a quick slide about what we do. We've got an extensive training program wrapped around a lot of the safe role-based activities. We've got some new training opportunities that we have around tooling like Jira and ADO. And then we've got a partner that we work with that is helping us do some certified Scrum Master classes. So pretty much if there's some kind of agile training you need, come see us. But we also do consulting and strategy engagements, as well as coaching and mentoring from a leadership level all the way to the teams and Scrum Masters. So if any of that stuff is needed for you, please come see us. And then this is Phil. He's going to be our presenter for today. Phil is a SAFE fellow, and he's got a slide that will actually kind of show, because it's a little bit pertinent to this idea of an advanced SPC. Phil's got a slide that will show kind of where a SAFE fellow matches on there, but suffice it to say that a SAFE fellow is one of about, 30 or 40 people in the world that were invited to be a SAFE fellow based on their expertise in agility. Of course, because it is from Scaled Agile, it comes like with a lens of SAFE, but Phil is kind of an Agile geek. So any and all Agile questions about any type of framework or the way that Agile principles can be used somewhere, they're all free game, and feel free to ask those questions. But today he's going to talk to us about the SPC journey, and specifically about the new Advanced SPC certification. This certification was like, they kind of announced it at the SAFE Summit in October, and then it becomes generally available, I believe, on February 11th is the official day. But we are able to go ahead and market it and sell the class now. We've already got some people signed up for our class coming up here in a couple of weeks. And so we're excited to tell you what it is, because it is a new approach to a certification path for Scaled Agile. It's not your normal, like your Safe Scrum Master class or anything like that. This one, it's set up a little bit differently. The approach is different, and Phil will explain all of those things. And we will have plenty of time at the end for a Q&A where we can all come on camera and have a chat about it. We think that it's going to take roughly 15, 20 minutes for the presentation. We'll allow all the time for Q&A that you need. We've set up the full hour here, and whatever time we need of that hour, that's exactly what we're going to use.
Awesome.
And
Thank
with
you,
that,
Matt.
Phil, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. So, there's a lot of questions in the market, right? What is an SPC? And, a year or two ago, I did a series of webinars around the SPC journey. SPC as a trainer, SPC as the leader of a LACE, SPC as a consultant, SPCs who were veterans. I see one individual here, Mark Harper, an SPC who also, served our country. Lots of different backgrounds. And so, your perception of what an SPC is, if you're a hiring manager, an executive at a company, you're looking for a consultant, looking for a full-time employee, you may want to, think about the wide breadth of skills and experiences that are out there. SPCs are people with a variety of backgrounds. I know an SPCT who's also one of the best RTE I've seen in my career, right? So you can have multiple hats that you wear. And so just because you become an SPC doesn't mean you're a full-time trainer. However, there are people out there that have never launched an Agile release train. They've never done any work in the field. They focus their career on teaching classes every week, right? So it can be a consultant, an expert in SAFe, an Agile coach, a variety of things. I like to just kind of level set my SPC related webinars with that kind of understanding that These are individuals that have a vast variety of skills and experiences. This what you're seeing here is a simplified version um, of a tool that I use when I mentor SPCs and people on the SPCT journey. When you think about as an SPC, what's something all SPCs have in common? There's two things that you can say are true about any SPC on the planet. One, they attended a 4-day implementing safe class. Two, they passed the SPC certification exam. That's the only thing you can say is true about every single SPC on the planet, because not all of them have a lot of experience with Lean and Agile. Some of them have been Scrum Masters, some of them have been Agile coaches, some of them have been project managers, right? It's a wide variety. And so as an SPC, you're responsible for your own learning journey, right? And how do you increase your skills, right? Sometimes you're a mentor, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you're a consultant telling people what you recommend. There's a variety of experiences you have, right? The 7 core competencies of SAFe, right? And those core responsibilities in SPC. Not every SPC has led a change, has led a transformation. Not every SPC has implemented LPM. Even SPCTs may not all have implemented Lean Portfolio Management. I've never done deep work with huge cyber physical systems using industrial DevOps, but I'm a SAFe fellow. So I want you to just kind of remember that you're an individual and you have to choose where you build your expertise, right? There's attributes. Not all SPCs are the same. Some people are much more directive. Some people are much more on the coaching side. So what domains are you an expert in, right? Business strategy, manufacturing, government. I mean, a wide variety. Point being here is that your SPC certification is the first step in an amazing journey, but it's a journey that you have to choose how to approach. Now, from a SAFe perspective, SPC is the first step in what's called the SAFe Experts path. These are the individuals that are designed to lead the change, right? To really be there to ensure that people get the most out of the framework. It starts with the SPC certification. And then beyond that, there was a gap here, right? So there are about 20,000 or so SPCs out there. And then boom, you've got the next step. Co-trainers, there's a couple dozen co-trainers out there. Those are individual SPCs that are being mentored towards the Safe Practice Consultant T path. T stands for transformation, training, a variety of things. And so there's now an opportunity to help bridge that gap. The first of the endorsements for SPCs is this new Advanced SPC certification. And it's going to kind of fit between SPC and co-trainer, right? This is built for experienced SPC. So it's important to note that the idea here is that we've got individuals that on their SPC journey have mastered those foundational Lean Agile practices. They've mastered the application of SAFe's 10 principles and 4 core values. They've had experience with this. They haven't just done training classes. They've actually been experienced in a variety of responsibilities that an SPC may hold. And it was developed by Scaled Agile to address some of the common bumps in the road that you might find as an SPC. Things like leadership engagement, metrics and measurement, lean portfolio management, right? You can become an SPC, and by becoming an SPC, you get about 3 hours of exposure to lean portfolio management. Even among the SPCT community, there are individuals who've never had the opportunity to lead an implementation of lean portfolio management. I'm calling that out because it's one area of the framework that has a lot of demand, but as a SPC, you might be in over your head a little bit. And so when Scaled Agile created this advanced SPC path, part of it was to kind of help you with some of these bumps in the road. Look, hey, we've implemented, I've talked to our director of our PMO, and we've stood up a Kanban board inside Jira, and all of our projects have an epic hypothesis statement now, but it doesn't seem like anything's really changed, right? Our LPM is stuck. Our OKRs are too vague, like increase profit. Well, how is that an outcome-based objective? Leadership is like, hey, why aren't we having engagement? Why aren't we making traction here? Why aren't we seeing the results from our transformation? How do we reinvigorate it? How do we create this sense of urgency for relentless improvement? Or simply, it's like, look, I've been an SPC for 5 years now. How and where do I learn more? Right. And so seeing the Advanced SPC certification, right? It's an expert level certification. It expands upon your initial SPC training, and it provides you with skills to manage an enterprise or government program transformation, transition, whatever you want to call it. I typically don't use the word transformation these days because I don't think it ever stops. But as you look at shepherding people into a new way of working, this gives you some specific skills. It is not designed, this is designed to help you overcome complex implementation challenges, right? So Scaled Agile gathered feedback from over 1,000 active SPCs, people who are actually out there working, launching Agile release trains, trying to change to a new way of working. And that research allowed them to create a set of content that really meets the needs of real lean agile leaders out there in the space. It's been field tested with solutions that make a difference. This is content you won't find necessarily front and center on the framework site. You won't find it in the standard classes. And so you're going to learn things like advanced techniques for measuring and demonstrating clear business value. That's a question that we always get. And we hear things in the marketplace about people moving away from Agile. Well, if you can't measure something, you can't show that, it's a lot easier to show a senior executive data that actually indicates there's more value being delivered than there is in just saying, hey, trust me, I'm an SPC. This is going to be great. Right? We see that sometimes. I'm glad somebody's enjoying my joke there a little bit. So, but also, how do you get leaders engaged? When I think about some of the talks I've given over the years at the summits and stuff, accelerating SAFe with executive engagement, right? Lean portfolio management. There's these advanced topics that really go beyond launching the art. I like to say to people, how do you move from arts to outcomes, right? And in the modern world, and where SAFe is going as a framework, it's not about just launching arts. It's about that business agility for the entire organization. And so it takes some time and some practice with SAFe to get the background and the understanding so that you can then build upon that. And so this learning experience has proven solutions for immediate application. So there are tips and tricks that you'll get from SAFe fellows and people who've been doing this out there in the most complicated spaces that are brought into this learning experience. You can advance your career, right? You earn this advanced certification. It definitely is something that will differentiate you from the other thousands of SPCs out there. And finally, it is something that is flexible. So this is not a standard class. Now, when people are going to the market, right, most of us are going to be advertising this as a 3-day experience, right? And I'll get to what's involved in just a second, but a 3-day experience. However, in the background, those of us that are like myself that are so excited about this being available finally, we're looking at other ways of approaching it. For example, I do a lot of mentoring, right? So at Engaged Agility, one of the questions we always ask when someone approaches us about consulting services is, who will we be mentoring? And most of the time, we find individuals inside that will help cultivate and enhance their skills and experience so that they can move on, they can take it from there themselves. And so when you think about the advanced SPC path, you're going to be learning and growing from the expertise of somebody that's probably, SPCTs, they're the verified experts in SAFe. All of them have at least a year and a half, 2 years of experience, right? So there are new SPCTs, and there's ones that like Martin Olson on here, he's been an SPCT for, I guess, almost a decade, right? So, just like with SPCs, you want to do your research and kind of understand the expertise and the skill sets of a SPC. Same thing with an SPCT. All that to say that we're kicking around the idea of doing cohorts, right? So imagine if over a 6-week period of time, inside your company, there's 7 of you SPCs, and you go through this learning experience together. Instead of doing it all in 3 days, we do it over the course of once a week for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, right? So there's lots of different things that we might toy with. So if you are interested in this as we go through, don't be afraid to reach out to Matt or myself, because it doesn't have to be all delivered in 3 days, but we're starting from scratch, right? The first classes are being offered the second week of February. Where do we go from there? So with that said, I'm going to pivot over to actually the advanced SPC path, right? So it's delivered through a flexible modular learning approach, which allows us to do this differently. And it combines a little bit of self-paced learning, a lot of instructor-led learning, hands-on learning lab, peer learning, right? The focus is engaging leadership, lean portfolio management, measuring the business benefits of SAFe, and fostering a culture of relentless improvement, kind of that Kaizen mindset. And so let's take a look at this. So there's prerequisites. You're an experienced SPC in good standing. What that means is you have to be current on your SPC certification. You need to be a SAFe 6.0 safe practice consultant. From there, there's one self-paced e-learning module. Scaled Agile introduced kind of a soft rollout. They introduced what they call SAFe skills. And these are little small e-learning experiences that are targeted learning for a specific set. There's a lot of great ones out there from, there's some great content. I think there's 3 or 4, maybe 5 on product management. There's one right here, which is writing effective OKRs. So when you register for the Advanced SPC certification course, you'll get access to the writing effective OKRs. And you need to go through that little e-learning module as part of your learning journey. Then there's 4 instructor-led modules, right? First off, how do you actually execute a successful transformation strategy, right? A lot of us, myself included, we started our SAFe journey by doing some training and launching an ART, but there may be more to keep in mind. And the more you plan up front for what this is going to look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and how do you actually ensure that the change is sustainable? When people ask me, how do I measure success with SAFe? For me, it's like, are they still using the framework years later, right? And it will evolve and change, and the way you use it and the way the framework works itself, the framework team's always adding new things, new improved things. When I first got excited about lean portfolio management, I was told, Phil, that's something you only do after you launch ARTs. Well, I said, what if we didn't? What if we did it at the same time? And I was one of a few individuals that showed a use case. In this case, it was at AT&T, about what can really happen if you start with LPM. And so point being is that you're going to be evolving, the framework's evolving. The other part there, like I said, I mentioned LPM. I'm a big fan of LPM. I'll tell you, it's one of the reasons that I asked Matt if I could start teaching this. When I teach public LPM classes, I get a lot of SPCs who take the LPM class, and I find myself saying, this is the content, this is the model. However, I'll get questions from these SPCs about, well, how do you actually do it? How do you actually implement this? How do you actually get leaders to choose to change, right? And, that's a whole different question. This content is unique, and it actually allows you to actually figure out ways, based on real world case studies, how do you actually get into this? How do you actually excel with LPM? And those of you that may have seen some of my talks, I talk about kind of 2 types of LPM. There's the bottoms up LPM where, we convince the PMO director to let us have a Kanban board, and we start painting everything with the epic hypothesis brush. But at the end of the day, it's just more fields on our project template, right? Versus portfolio leadership starting that LPM journey, where we've got portfolio leaders that are saying, we're willing to work differently. And they get together, they work as an agile team, Think of them like a shark tank where they scrutinize the opportunities that are being pitched to them, right? And they look for ways to deliver the smallest thing to market so that they can actually validate that they're going to get the outcome they want because they're actually interested in measuring it. Those are differences there in kind of the LPM journey. And the instructor-led module on LPM digs deeper and gives you the skills and the insights to be able to effectively implement LPM. Along the way, how do you also engage leaders? Scaled Agile's Dr. Steve Maynard led a team of people to create some amazing advanced leadership content. And a lot of that great work has found its way into this engaging leaders modules. One of the things that you'll encounter on your journey is how do I actually talk to leaders and get them engaged? Because convincing a developer or a tester or a scrum master or a product owner, or a first line manager about the value of SAFe takes different technique when you try to talk to a C-suite executive or a C+1 executive, right? They have different things they're looking for. And it's great. It's hard to implement SAFe without the support of executives. But when you have engaged executives, your ceiling on what you can accomplish with the framework is raised considerably. And so that's one of the 4 modules of the Advanced SPC path. And then the 4th one is really pursuing relentless improvement. And this includes things like metrics, right? How do you actually continuously leverage these feedback loops to do better and better and better? So hands-on labs, contextualized learning, and things like that, which brings me to this last part. There's a learning lab. And so we've got the one self-paced, then we've got about 4-hour modules on each of these sections here, the instructor-led. And then the 5th section, the 3rd day, if we do a 3-day class, the 3rd day is the learning lab. And this is much more immersive. It's peer-based. It really is kind of, originally the thought was, as SPCTs or fellows who are facilitating this course, we're going to evaluate you. And instead of having an exam, we're going to actually evaluate you. After some consideration, Scaled Agile made a decision to keep with the existing certification exam path just for consistency. But think about this learning lab as a place to really show that you've absorbed the stuff from the e-learning and from the instructor-led. And then there's an exam. I don't have the details on all the exams right now. I believe it's going to be similar to the other exams, probably a $50 retake. You probably have 30 days to take it and things like that. But once you've done this path, then you get the Advanced Safe Practice Consultant certification. My understanding is this is just one of many. One of the other things that's pretty exciting about this is that Scaled Agile is investing in the SPCs. And that's something where before, as I showed in a couple slides previous, so it was really kind of, we're an SPC, and then there's this big gap until you find a partner that's willing to sponsor you as a co-trainer. And then you get into this you apply, you get nominated, and you go through a series of interviews, and you become a candidate. I see some people on the webinar that are SPCT candidates, where it's 1, 2, sometimes even 3 years proving to Scaled Agile, working with a Scaled Agile guide, showing them that you have the actual field experience. So when people talk about an SPCT, and on the badge now it says verified expert, it's because it's the only certification in SAFe where Scaled Agile has scrutinized your field experience, and they're saying, yes, you can teach classes, yes, you can launch arts, right? It doesn't mean you're an expert on everything, but it definitely shows you some experience. And so Advanced SPC kind of helps us towards that. So with that said, I think we're good for Q&A. So about 20 minutes, like you said, Matt. So question, okay, will obtaining Advanced SPC certification aid in my SPCT application? So, or is it a prerequisite? So I suspect that it will eventually absolutely will become a requirement. That's my personal opinion. I don't know that there's actually been a decision made on that yet. If somebody, do we have anybody on here from Scaled Agile? I know Scaled Agile's got some amazing people like Adam Wilbur and others, Tessa Powell, Cheryl Krupe. They're the core people behind this awesome new thing. There's Adam. Adam, do you happen to know, I'm putting you on the spot there, do you happen to know if it's going to be a requirement for SPCT?
To deliver the course.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's correct.
No, I'm sorry. To become an SPCT, are you going to have to be an advanced SPC first?
As far as today is concerned, that's not a decision that has been made.
Okay.
The PCT path, it is as is. And this we're adding the advanced SPC. There was some great feedback that we received in our enablement session around kind of building advanced SPC certification into the SPCT path, which we may do, but as of today, that has not happened.
Thank you. And along those lines, Colette, I've mentored 3 people in the path towards SPCT now, right, over the last several years. And I will tell you that anybody, so there's what Scaled Agile requires for nomination, and then there's what your partner requires for nomination. And when I was leading a consulting company, SAFe practice, I required all of my SPCs that were going to be nominated to have gone through the LPM class, to have taken LPM, to have taken APM, to have taken an architect. Those 3 requirements are not required to be nominated as an SPCT. Just like as an SPC, you can go teach LPM without ever having taken the class. For me, everybody I've mentored, if you're going to teach LPM, take it first, please, right? And so, personally, you might set a bar that's higher than what's documented. So I would personally recommend anybody looking to get into the SPCT program would definitely want to invest in this path. Now, somebody says, what's the cost? So it's right now, the recommended price is $3,500. But what we know, acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of training, right? When I teach lean portfolio management, I think it's like $1,695, but I've seen people offering it for $700. Now, is that person somebody who got their SPC last week? Possibly, right? I'm a big fan of telling people, research your instructor because it will make a difference in your classroom experience. I've seen people, I would imagine with the current market, people are going to start lowering that price considerably. For us, we consider this to be, because it's delivered by an SPCT or even a SAFe fellow, we're looking at $29.95, I believe. Is that correct, Matt?
$29.97.
Okay.
If anybody wants it for $29.95, I'll dock the $2.
And I do believe that Matt's going to be reaching out to the people who've attended this, and part of the thank you for joining us, he will provide a discount code that those of you that attended today can get. You might find it for less than that, but once again, being blunt, I've been doing this for, I got started my SAFe journey in 2013. I mean, hundreds of implementations I've researched, been part of. And I can tell you that I'll do a good class, right? And I think everybody's gonna do a good class. But if you're looking for somebody who's got deep experience with LPM, and that's why you want to take Advanced SPC, sign up for my class. If you're looking at org change and relentless improvement, Martin's class is going to probably be the one to take. There's different SPCTs have different levels of expertise. And so research your instructors. If cost is the only issue, I cannot imagine that there will not be high volume providers out there offering it for lower, but Scaled Agile's guidance is 34 something. And we're going with the same price we go for implementing with $29.95. Let's see here. What other questions do you have? Let's see.
Hey, Phil, I just want to jump in on something that you said
Please.
earlier. That because you were talking about, hey, Martin's done org change and stuff, and you've got LPM. That's part of the reason that we're thinking about kind of maybe a multi-week advanced SPC cohort, so that we can bring in the different instructors to talk about where they have deep specialties. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, we'd love to hear feedback on it. It's when we list it on the public calendar, it's kind of a hard sell because people are like, no, I want to go and I want to get this done in 3 days or 4 days or whatever it is, and I don't want it to take weeks. But if y'all think that's something that you're interested in, please let us know. We'd love the feedback because we want to set that up and provide that in a way that's easy for you guys to, 1, attend it, and 2, have it make sense and be valuable.
So
I don't want to beat up on your Zoom foo, Matt, but is it possible to do a quick poll I'd be interested with the participants. If you were offered this opportunity to take this class over a couple of weeks in a more cohort-based, slower pace, deeper the learning and more internalization of the learning, would that be desirable to you, all things being equal, or would you rather
Get
get
it over
through
with
it
in
in a
3
couple of
days.
days?
Yeah, 3 days though. But hey, Matt,
Yeah,
maybe while I answer a couple more questions, you could build that poll.
You,
If we
And
don't do a
if you
poll,
can't, Matt, sorry, I put you on the spot.
if we can't, we can Matt and I talked about potentially putting together a survey as part of
Yeah,
this.
I think that would be
So
that would
maybe
be
that's
good.
the way
I'll
we do
put
is
it-
we'll send out a survey that if you're willing to answer.
Yep.
I can tell you that, you know, when we mentor change agents, you know, I think about the years I spent working in the government market, and it was an interesting time. Is, you know, 2019, 2020, 2021, or 18, 19, and 20, and there were a lot of coaches who had gotten contracts to provide coaching to the government, but they had no experience. And it was a really interesting dynamic because the big defense contractors who could afford people's salaries like me, right, didn't get the contracts for the coaching. The coaching went to small businesses and they didn't have any experience. And so one of the things I learned from that was the importance of community. And we built communities where it was safe for people to ask questions and kind of pick the brain. And when we're looking at this cohort-based model, think of it as the stuff you learn in class with some additional time and resources to have a phone a friend. Hey, I'm in this specific situation. How do I apply what I learned in the advanced SPC content in my own context? So that's kind of what we're kicking around. But we'll it's just ideas at this point because the class hasn't come out yet, right? So we just know what we want to do. Prerequisites. The only prerequisite is that you've taken implementing SAFe and you've obtained your SAFe practice consultant certification, and that it's in good standing. So you can't be an SPC 3 or an SPC 4. If you started back in 2013 or 2014, you definitely need to be current. What else?
So, Phil, this is Ramya. So you were mentioning, right, if it is in one organization and there are 6, 7 SPCs, then we can do cohort. But my situation is I'm the only SPC in my organization.
Oh yeah,
right.
So I here's the challenge, being blunt, right? So, I don't know if people realize this or not, but you can actually, when you go to the Scaled Agile training calendar, right? I'm just going to share my screen again real quick. When you go to the Scaled Agile training calendar, right? There's 2,440 classes being offered, right? How do let's look at Advanced Safe Practice Consultant, right? 39 classes, right? How do you know which one to take, right? Now, in this scenario, we know they're all done by SPCTs, because you have to be an SPCT in order to do this. But if you were to look at how many SAFe fellows, right? And SAFe, if you think of SPCT as the verified expert in implementing SAFe fellows we've got kind of that thought leadership. It's hard to articulate the difference, but it's kind of we're the ones that are kind of helping break the framework and show new practices and things like that. But you can look and say, hey, who are the fellows that teach it? But even in this, it's really difficult to figure out, well, if I'm looking at one of these classes, how do I know, if you're shopping for a class as a user, where is it, right? And you're looking at these classes, how do you know, they're all 3 days, but this one over here, look, February 14th to March 28th. There's nothing on here that says this is a cohort class, right? And so it's difficult for us to kind of gauge how feasible it is to operate to advertise a public cohort class. Having said that, absolutely there'd be value in doing that, because you learn so much from other people outside your context, right? Imagine, that I would not be a SAFe fellow if it weren't for all of the people I met on my journey and hearing their stories and their tips and their tricks, right? And even, the class by itself is designed with lots of activities where you learn from your peers. but expanding that and kind of fostering some better relationship building over a longer period of time is absolutely there. So when Matt reaches out, please express your interest. If we can get 5, 6 people who are interested, we can figure out a way to make it happen. I'm definitely interested. I know Martin is, and the other SPCTs at Engage Agility as well. Okay, so
Thank you, Phil.
yeah, and there's a poll. Matt just popped up, right?
I did. I made it work. Martin, challenge accepted and done. Except evidently I did not get a good title
In
on
your
my poll,
face,
but
Martin. Look at you. Look at you. It's a Friday, and you're still producing. That's
right.
true talent.
Can't get much past me.
While you guys are doing that poll, what questions do you have? I mean, what if you're thinking about, what would stop you from signing up for this class other than the cost? I mean, it's expensive, right? And I'm curious, this as a new product, right? What are the barriers to someone being able to enjoy the experience, right? What are the outcomes you would hope to be able to achieve after obtaining it, right? Anybody have thoughts or things to share around that, or other questions?
A quick question. I've been an SPC for a few minutes,
Okay.
and done a ton of big organization transformation, if that's what you want to call it. Been playing around a lot of big organizations. So, how will this training be different and be more experience focused than actual, the safe way? Which I'm one of these people too that. The framework is the framework is the framework, and we work with every organization to see which parts fit and which parts fit well, and then we try to connect these together. So how will this training, outside of, Phil, you being an SPCT and a fellow, how will this training and the material be more focused on real world scenarios versus, hey, here's Burns's thought from a psychological perspective on how you address these leaders versus how things are really in the real world? So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, so it's I haven't taught it yet, so I probably have a better answer for you after that first week, right? And reviewing all of the materials and reviewing the activities, there's a lot more use cases, scenarios, right? So you think about the implementing safe class, a lot of it's really kind of helping you understand. 5 years ago, maybe 7 now. It's been a while. Scaled Agile used to have published requirements in order to take their classes. When COVID hit and 30,000 classes popped up on the calendar, somehow those class, what do you call it? Requirements to take the class went away.
Yeah, we kind of never bounced back from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is a completely different animal, right? Cheryl Krupe, the fellow and the framework team member who's been on point for this, she led the transformation at MetLife. She's just a brilliant woman, and other people at Scaled Agile as well working on this. But the goal, Advanced SPC has been a topic in the SPCT and fellows community for 5, 6, 7 years, and the thing is that how do we help SPCs move beyond the classroom, move beyond the theory, right?
I agree. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with the need because, the SPCs out there, it reminds me a lot of back in the PMP days.
Right.
Everybody had a PMP, but nobody knew how to manage a project.
So
I support this, and I was just curious more about that because as I get a lot of my SPCs signing up, that'll be some of the questions I get.
So I will say this, that interesting on the poll, 80% said over a longer period of time. So that tells me we should probably figure out a way to offer this publicly, and Matt and I and Martin and others will take that back and we'll come back with something. Those of you that are on this webinar, Matt can give you an update when that's happening. Real quick, George, to close out with George here. Really, it's designed to be much more experiential. Have you taken any of the SAFE micro-credential?
Oh yeah, I'm up to the spot where I need to take the training for the advanced.
So with micro-credentials, right? So with the micro-credentials, you're not sitting there having somebody lecture at you the entire time, right? It's let's explore together, right? So this is more similar to that than it is to a course in that we're spending our time digging into real world problems and use cases, right?
Right.
And along the way, we're going to provide you with patterns. So at the end of the day, there's only so many patterns. You start seeing patterns emerge, right? Right now, we're seeing a pattern around product operating model, right?
Yeah.
Where companies want to implement SAFe, and meanwhile, their leadership has decided to implement a product operating model. Well, how do you combine SAFe and a product operating model, right? That's a current challenge that's being talked about at the fellows, in the fellows community. And Scaled Agile is working on how do we highlight all the great product innovation stuff going on here. I mentioned earlier portfolio leadership, right? This idea that LPM starts from the top is a much different experience than when you push it up from the bottom. Those types of use cases, not those specifically, but those types of use cases and insights from the fellows community, from the SPCT community, from the SPCs that were interviewed as part of the research that went into creating this course, those create the learning experience. I'd be happy to reconnect with you, later on. I haven't dug in. I haven't spent the days I need to digging into all this stuff yet.
Sure.
Because it's relatively new. I'll
Gotcha.
pause there and see what other questions we have. Say, would you say Advanced SPC opens doors to more consulting opportunities? So is there ROI where folks would be in high demand? So this is something that it's interesting, right? So I'm a SAFe fellow. Am I in high demand? One could say yes, but one could also say no, because my dance card's not full today, right?
Right.
And so, it's a hard, I would never look someone in the eye and say, take this course and I guarantee you'll get a job. That goes against my integrity, right? You can't guarantee things like that. Now, I do believe that as this gets going and people become, hiring managers, like, for example, I work with a lot of senior execs, right? I'm going to talk to them about Advanced SPC. You already heard me how I opened this webinar, right? Talking about not all SPCs are created equal. Not even all SPCTs are created equal, right? There's SPCs that are steamrollers. There's SPCs that are, they answer every question with, well, what do you think the answer is, right? And, finding that right balance of consultant versus coach is something that makes a difference when you're choosing someone to come in and help you. As an SPC, where you are on that spectrum, where you focus. Are you a DevOps person or are you a business person, right? You can't necessarily do all of it, right? The very first SPC journey webinar I did, Harry Honerman, one of the most brilliant guys I know, framework team member at Scaled Agile. We were talking about my time in the government working, and Harry was my phone a friend. When they're running into problems with these big cyber physical system of a missile warning system, and I can tell you how the solution train works. I can tell you the concepts, but I've launched 3 or 4 solution trains. Harry's been involved in dozens that are focused on hardware and cyber physical systems. And we're talking on this webinar, and he's like, he said, don't ask me about LPM. He's not an expert in LPM, even though he's a SAFe fellow and a member of the framework team, right? We all have knowledge, but so going back to your question here, I believe that this will elevate things in the market. I can tell you that I will encourage people I mentor personally to get this certification. I would imagine that companies that are implementing SAFe, if they're going to look for hiring an SPC to come in and serve as a coach or member of their LACE or as an RTE or a change leader, they're probably going to say, well, do you have Advanced SPC? And even if it doesn't give you the experience, it gives you exposure to the concepts that you're going to encounter on your journey, most likely in those 4 core areas. So that's how I answer that question. Other thoughts, questions? Adam, I invite Adam from Scaled Agile to say any other words as needed, but someone was speaking. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. Please.
No, it's all right. It's Vanessa. Hi. You asked about barriers earlier, and I'm always excited to get in on like the ground floor of something new. For me, I'm also a person who won't buy the brand new model of a car. Because like I want to see the bugs come out of it first, like the first year or two. And that's what comes to mind when I think about this course too, is like, you don't know what you don't know when you're teaching a brand new course. So it's hard to apply some of those practical lessons learned without having lessons learned. So for me, like I would want to know more about like, where does the content come from?
Mm.
How did they put this together? That sort of information before I would feel comfortable spending $3,000 on a
Yeah.
brand new course.
And I can share a little bit about that with you. So, like I said, so Scaled Agile has a quarterly fellows event, right, where we get together as a fellows community. At every SAFE summit, there's what's called an SPCT day, where all the SPCTs get together. We talk about the patterns, the challenges we're seeing in the industry and things like that. Scaled Agile is always doing research to kind of figure out, how do they need to grow and evolve the framework. And one of the persistent things is we need to give more to people who are in this SPC role to encourage to advance their journey. And so Advanced SPC has been it got started almost a year ago, right? So it's not something that's brand new. It's brand new to me from the standpoint of I haven't taught it yet because it doesn't go available until February 11th. But they piloted the first of the 4 modules was piloted at the SAFE Summit in October. And that cohort has continued, right, since then, and it's delivered by Scaled Agile, by Shale Krupe and a couple others. And that alpha and beta versions of the course, and there's a beta going on right now over in Europe with Nico, and those are allowing them to test and refactor. And so when they go to market, it's actually going to be pretty baked. What we don't know is how it'll work with 5 students instead of 40, right? We don't know how it's going to work delivered in 3 days because Scaled Agile has been delivering it in a cohort, right? So we're going to learn those things. So I definitely respect your perspective on it. I do want to say that I don't believe this is a matter of experimental content. As I mentioned earlier, it comes from content that's not been freely available on the site. It comes from insights from the framework team and the fellows community and research. I mentioned Dr. Maynard had created this amazing leadership training experience about, kind of how do you become an authentic leader and a lot of good stuff there. A lot of that IP has found its way into this module, right? So it's not brand new content. It's just never before packaged content because that content did not lend itself to somebody lecturing it, right? It lended itself to experiential learning, which is what this is. Adam, do you want to maybe throw some official? That's all my perspective, but you're Scaled Agile Incorporated, so.
No, Phil, I think you and Matt have done really an amazing job putting this presentation together this morning. And I'm sitting over here taking a couple notes of things that I'm going to borrow from your webinar, and so I think that's that's a testament to just how spot on you are. No, but what you were just saying is absolutely right. We got feedback from, it was over 1,000 in the final count, active, practicing SPCs in the field in order to build this course. We're pulling content in from a variety of our kind of premium workshops from Mark Ricks and from Steve Maynard, and just our community of SPCTs and fellows have really kind of contributed a lot to the thinking over the course of years. And that's exactly right. And this is a course that we knew we were going to build for, I don't know, since I've worked at Scaled Agile, and I'm in my 6th year at Scaled Agile. So, since 2019, at least, this has been floating around. So it's great to see it finally come to fruition. I love the way that we're starting to explore these more flexible kind of modular learning paths. That's, again, based on feedback that we heard from our community, folks that were saying, hey, this content's great, these classes are great, but it's really, really hard for me to get away from my actual job to go sit in a class for 3 straight days or for 2 straight days. And then also just considering the amount of information and content and learning that's packed into those days. For me personally, taking Scaled Agile classes, it's hard to really learn that much in one day. It takes several days of follow-up kind of study to cement it into your own mind. And so I for me, individually, Adam Wilbur, I feel like these paths will better suit the way that I tend to learn, which is a little bit more of of a process rather than just kind of like consume it all once and then I've got it and I'm good to go. So in any case, really excited to see these conversations starting. I'm really excited to read some of the feedback in the chat here. This is helpful for me. There's a couple points that I'll definitely be taking back to Tessa and Cheryl and the product team. And so, yeah, just want to, congratulate you on the session today. And if you need help, if Matt needs help, if anybody on the call is looking for any content or has any questions, we just want to be here to be a resource for the community to help make you all successful.
Thanks, Adam. Hey, Blake, you have a question, sir?
Yes, I do. Thank you for allowing me to speak here. How do I take down the hand though? Anyways, we'll figure that out in a moment. This may not actually lend to this model of learning, but I've been having some thoughts, just to be a pharmacy technician requires 500 hours of actual on the floor in the pharmacist's office, working with the medication and the data before one can even take the test. It reminds me of the aviation industry as well, where how many flight hours are required in order to get your basic commercial pilot's license. I think about that apprentice and journeyman relationship, but I don't know if this industry really lends to that. And that's another thing that really begs, because that's the cost to the employer and or a client in that relationship. But that is what I say is experiential learner. You're learning alongside someone who is the apprentice or the journeyman, and that person, whether it's the trades, electrical, plumbing, etc., and then you're able to adapt and address things as they arise, because there'll always be unique situations that may not be just simple academic answer to, and how to navigate that requires experience. So just thoughts. I know this model is not going to lend to it, realistically speaking, but thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Blake, I will say that what you've brought up, I know Adam heard it yesterday from many people. There's a huge challenge in. So, are there going to be people out there that are going to say they're experts because they took this class? Yeah, right. And that's why I was very intentional in starting this webinar off with that level set, right? And I tell stories like, don't ask me about large cyber physical systems. I mean, I can give you the textbook answer, and I have some experience, but I'm not the expert in it, right? That's Harry, right? Or Robin, or Suzette, right?
Yeah.
But that's me, and there's no one that can force me to have that level of transparency, right? And so I've spent the last several years trying to encourage the leaders I speak to take a deeper dive into who's the individual, not what certifications do they have. Now, the reality is the market, and this is my personal opinion, is that there's two types of people who purchase classes out there. And this is me being dramatic, because I'd like to make dramatic examples. On one end of the spectrum, you've got the person who wants another acronym for their LinkedIn last name. So they're going to look for the cheapest class, the fastest class, to be able to become the latest and greatest certification. On the other end of that spectrum, you've got people that are really trying to make a difference in the world. And they know they don't know everything, and they have this genuine desire to learn and grow, right? I want these people in my class. Sadly, there's no filter, right? There's no filter to say, how do I get them? And so, I will tell you that there is something at Scaled Agile that is more akin to what you just described, and that's the SPCT journey. So while it doesn't have the 500 hours, you can trust that every SPCT out there has been involved in the launch of 3 different Agile release trains, maybe in the same company, maybe in different companies, that they've successfully delivered multiple classes with good feedback, right? It doesn't guarantee that they're an expert in LPM or that they're an expert in DevOps, but it does say they have the bigger picture and they have actual field experience. There's no way to really commercially create a course offering that you can guarantee everybody's done this, because it costs a lot of money to build a course, right? And so how does Scaled Agile, break even or make a profit and so it's a catch-22. And so that's why for me, I try and kind of really model that transparency. And if the industry realizes that, hey, Advanced SPC means this person went through and was exposed to this content that that covers these critical areas, then it raises the bar a little bit, right? I can tell you that I would hope that no one out there there's no sadly I don't believe this is the case, but I would hope that no SPC out there who took implementing SAFe is off there selling their services to implement LPM, because you get 3 hours of overview content about LPM. That does not prepare you to go implement LPM, right?
Mm-hmm.
This module, in that 4 hours of content, you're getting much more content to actually help you be able to successfully implement that than you do in the implementing SAFe class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'll pause there, but no, thank you for the input.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, I know we're about at our time box. Any final comments from our esteemed SPCTs or our guest from Scaled Agile here? Feel free. And I will close with this. Phone a friend. I mentioned it earlier. Part of what Scaled Agile is hoping to do, and I know because I was talking to this woman, Michelle, at Scaled Agile, there is not currently a community of SPCs. We've got an amazing community of SAFe fellows, a good community for SPCTs, but there's not really a community for SPCs, and that is on the radar. How do we support you in a community model? At Engaged Agility, we're kicking around the idea of doing that ourselves because it's hard to pull off, but definitely find your community, because there's things you'll learn from them that you won't. But feel free to connect. We do have our first class is February 12th. We're going to do another one in March, but thank you for your time and attendance.